I'm Kana Whitworth with ABC News. This is the King Road Killings. The full series is out now. Listen to every episode wherever you get your podcasts.
ABC News, America's #1 news source.
Before we go, we want to invite you to all share in the ways in which you're spreading your kindness in your community. So join our kindness movement with your story using the hashtag GMA3, cool to be kind. And that is what you need to know for this Baby Friday.
Yes, it's Baby Friday. Not bad. DeMarco Morgan with my new family right here. I feel like we need like a dance routine. You got DeMar. Have a good one. Bravo. Yes.
When I got sent to Idaho to cover the murders of 4 college students, it was a story that didn't make any sense. 4 students stabbed to death in their beds while 2 roommates were home.
You got to think to yourself, okay, who's the target and how many people would a man go through to get to his target?
I'm Kana Whitworth with ABC News. This is the story of savage murders, a determined small-town police force, and a scholar of crime. This is the King Road Killings. The full series is out now. Listen to every episode wherever you get your podcasts.
Tonight, the deadly mass shooting in Maine at a bar and a bowling alley. David Muir reports from Lewiston, Maine, as the hunt for the alleged killer and the investigation unfold. More Americans turn to the most watched newscast on television, World News Tonight with David Muir.
For 30 years, my brother's death was this mystery. Was he pushed? Did he kill himself?
There's been some human remains found at the bottom of North.
From America's #1 news source comes the all-new ABC News app. Breaking news, incredible video, faster, smarter, and it can customize to you and your interests. If you love being in the know, you're gonna love this. Experience what all the buzz is about. Experience the all-new ABC News app. Download it now.
Traveling with President Biden in Ireland, I'm Karen Travers. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Good afternoon to you. I'm Faith Abube here in Washington. Breaking news on ABC News Live. The massive manhunt intensifying for the accused gunman in the deadliest mass shooting so far this year. The rampage happening in 2 separate locations in Maine, a bowling alley and a bar and grill. What we're learning about the suspect, a U.S. Army reservist with a history of mental health issues. Plus, new details on the victims and the harrowing stories of survival from those who managed to escape the gunfire. We begin with that deadly mass shooting in Lewiston, Maine. ABC News has confirmed the names of 6 of the 18 people who were killed. Bob Violet, a youth bowling coach, and Trisha Aslin both died at that bowling alley that was hosting a children's league last night. And then at Schmenge's Bar and Grill, 4 miles away, manager Joseph Walker was gunned down. Stephen Vazella, Bill Brackett, and Brian McFarland were attending a gathering of deaf people playing cornhole at that same bar. And right now, an intense manhunt underway for the accused gunman, Robert Card, charged with 8 counts of murder. Police say he used an AR-style weapon during that shooting at the bowling alley and the bar, and authorities are now confirming 18 people have died, 13 others were wounded. The FBI and U.S. Marshals are helping local law enforcement there in this investigation. A shelter-in-place order is now in place. It's been extended and expanded beyond Lewiston. It has now been expanded to the neighboring town of Lisbon, where officials say they found a white Subaru they believe belongs to that suspect, and they've recovered a firearm. Officials now looking to confirm if that was the firearm that was used in the shootings. Sources also telling ABC News that back in July, the suspect, Robert Card, was behaving erratically while serving as an Army reservist. They say that he was threatening violence against other soldiers there. We also know that Card was deployed this past summer to Camp Smith Training Center in upstate New York to help support training for West Point cadets. Maine's governor, Janet Mills, cautioning people in that community, telling them not to approach Card under any circumstance.
The full weight of my administration is behind law enforcement's efforts to capture the person of interest, Robert Card, to hold whoever is responsible for this atrocity accountable under the full force of state and federal law, and to seek full justice for the victims and their families.
And back here in Washington, President Biden calling the incident senseless and tragic, saying as a country, we cannot accept this. The small town of Lewiston shaken, understandably, by this incident. Witnesses were calling the moment they ran for their lives last night.
It's something that you'd think would never happen. I never thought I'd grow up and get a bullet in my leg. Why? Like, why do people do this? I was more worried about, like, am I going to live? Am I going to make it out of here? Like, what's going to happen? Are the cops going to come?
The whole thing was up. It was just, yeah. I don't know how to explain it. I don't think you're supposed to see that in real life.
And just absolutely heartbreaking all around. We want to bring in ABC's Morgan Norwood, who's in Lewiston, Maine right now, for more on what we're learning about this. Morgan, thank you so much for joining us. Just tell us about what you're learning right now about these victims that we've identified so far.
Well, Faith, another victim identified within the past few minutes. I mean, but Faith, bottom line, these were people who were simply out enjoying their lives. I mean, they were at a bowling alley, a popular recreation site, also a bar and restaurant. I mean, these are everyday activities that so many of us do on the regular. But I know that you named some of the names, but I want to, give them that as well. And I want to be sure to name all 6 of them. Bob Violet, killed at the bowling alley. He was the youth bowling coach, as you mentioned. Trisha Oslin, also killed inside that bowling alley. Joseph Walker, he was the manager at that bar and grill, Schmangy's. Stephen Vozella, Bill Brackett, Brian McFarland. You know, they were all a part of a gathering of deaf people playing corn toss for a fundraiser. So again, you know, these were people just simply enjoying their lives, and then you have this mass shooting, this tragedy, sadly taking it away from them in an instant.
And Morgan, you've been in this community. You even received an alert this afternoon talking about the expanded and extended shelter-in-place order that these community members are also receiving. School was canceled today because of the shooting. Have you been able to actually speak to anybody on the ground? I know it's been quiet in the downtown area. And if you have been able to talk to anyone, what are they telling you?
Well, you know, Faith, I think there's a sense of anxiety, right? You know, fear, worry that the suspect could literally be anywhere here in this community. And I think the bottom line of this worry is that he could possibly strike again. But, you know, I can say this too. Many folks here have a sense of anger. There is this infuriation, this frustration that this was allowed to happen, or that this hit so close to home. I mean, 356 mass shootings just this year, and you know, last night was the deadliest one so far this year. But the feeling on the ground here is, you know, yes, people are driving around, but I can personally tell you, you know, this town is essentially a ghost town. I mean, we spent 20 minutes just an hour ago trying to find a place that was open, and so people are really taking this lockdown, this shelter-in-place order very seriously. Look, they don't want to give the suspect any place to hide, but they also want to give the police, you know, the more than 350 law enforcement officers that are combing the ground here and working on this case, working on this manhunt, the space to continue to do so safely. But they are very much looking over their shoulder. They are very much worried about, you know, where this suspect could be lurking and if he could strike again. But, you know, the other thing that I can tell you about this, you know, part of the healing process is the sense of relief once, you know, a suspect is in custody. So this is delaying the grieving process for this small community that is absolutely rattled by this, Faith.
And, you know, investigators, they have their job cut out for them. Not only are they trying to find the suspect, but they're also working to identify these victims. 13 people are also injured in the shooting. Some of them were sent to the hospital. Others have been released. Do we know more about their conditions and the type of injuries they suffered?
Yeah, we just got an update from the hospital. You know, officials here at this medical center right behind me giving an update within the past hour or so on the number of people still receiving care at the hospital. 8 patients still in stable condition. We've got 3 in critical condition. But, you know, I think the most encouraging update that I've heard so far from the medical team is the fact that officials say that they were finally able to allow visitation from their family members, which we know is critical within the healing process, both for the family members, but then also the loved ones who are working to recover. Faith?
Just a difficult situation that this community is dealing with. Our thoughts, of course, are with the families that are impacted by this. Morgan, thank you so much. We want to turn now to our Aaron Katersky, along with our other reporters and producers here for more on the search for the suspect. We start with our investigative reporter, Aaron Katersky, ABC News senior justice producer, Jack Date, and ABC News contributor and former FBI agent, Brad Garrett. Aaron, I want to start with you here. Law enforcement sources have been speaking to you today. They've been familiar with the case throughout the whole process. At this point, investigators are talking about how they found a note at the home of the mass shooting suspect. What can you tell us about that?
The police spent part of the day at an address in Bowdoin, Maine, that's associated with the mass shooting suspect, Robert Card. And inside that home, they did find a note. Now, the authorities did not describe the contents of the note or even explain whether it's particularly relevant to the investigation, but they are going through it as one clue to try and figure out more about this shooting suspect, who he is and why he allegedly shot and killed 18 people at the two locations in Lewiston, Maine. They've also gotten search warrants for some of his electronic devices, we're told, and they found a gun in his car. So they are getting different clues, but he is not in custody. And even if they did find a weapon in the car, the authorities believe that he is still armed and dangerous. So they're telling people, Faith, to steer clear if they encounter him.
And Aaron, you're also learning some very critical information here as far as this investigation is concerned. The suspect's family, as far as you're learning, they're cooperating with authorities right now. It's been reported that the shooter may have been looking for an ex-girlfriend, which could possibly speak to the location of these shootings. What more can you tell us about that?
The family of Robert Card has so far been cooperative with law enforcement officials, we're told. They've given a rather troubling account of this man's life, in and out of mental health treatment, hearing voices, some interactions that were troubling during his military service in the Army Reserve. And when his sister first heard about the shooting, the location at the bowling alley, and her brother's alleged involvement, the sister told law enforcement she thought he might be targeting an ex-girlfriend. Whether she works at that bowling alley or may have just bowled there, we don't know. But that's what the sister initially believed.
And Jack, I want to bring you in here. You have multiple agencies, including the FBI, ATF, and U.S. Marshals that are now involved in this case. We're talking the state level, federal level, all of them working with local law enforcement on this. Talk to us about what's next in this investigation. Obviously, they're still looking for the suspect at this point. While he's still on the run, we're coming up to 24 hours since this incident. What happens now?
Right. So there's several elements to this investigation, as Aaron already alluded to a few of them. Police are interviewing large numbers of people, anybody that had any association with him, friends, family members, other people he might have encountered, looking for any information that might help them understand where he might be headed next. There's forensic work that's being done. They're going to go back and look at computers and other devices that he might have accessed to see if that offers any information that might tell them anything about, again, where he might be headed next, what his motives are, anything that might lead them to be able to find him. There's also the physical search. It's extremely manpower intensive. There's a large area to cover. It's a wooded area. It's just difficult terrain to work in. The weather's starting to get cooler in New England. So they have to work with an enormous amount of manpower to execute that search, to really set up grids and meticulously look over him or over the area to be able to locate him.
And Brad, you've been following this closely, even watching it unfold in real time last night. What stands out to you right now as this investigation unfolds?
That he successfully pulled off basically a double mass suicide and got away. And it appears, at least up to this point, that he had an escape plan, which is not typical in mass shooters. They either tend to kill themselves at the scene, force the police to kill them, or they get caught. And so I don't think that was his intent at all. It was to move quickly from one mass shooting to the next and then leave. There's been some discussion that he has property, that he may have boats. He was near water, apparently, when his car disappeared. Did he get in a boat and go someplace? I mean, who knows? But the point being, there's a planned exit strategy, it appears, which is not common in mass shooters.
And at this point, he's still considered extremely dangerous while he's still on the run. So hopefully authorities are able to close in on him very soon. Aaron, Jack, and Brad, thank you so much for joining us. All right, coming up for us, the latest on the war between Israel and Hamas after IDF forces say their tanks briefly entered Gaza to prep for the next stages of combat. What this means for civilians ahead of an expected ground invasion. That's straight ahead.
I wish for the amazing new iPhone 15 Pro.
Sean, do you mean this one, the one with titanium? Switch to Verizon. You can trade in any iPhone and get the new iPhone 15 Pro on them.
It's your last chance to trade in any iPhone for a new iPhone 15 Pro on us, only on Verizon.